In the name of God, amen. I think this fourth Sunday of Advent is one of the most beautiful and precious in the church year, second only to Easter Sunday, maybe. This last Sunday, we come near to concluding our preparation for the coming of the Christ. We light the final candle in the Advent wreath and hear in our minds, even if we haven't sung it today, O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel. We will soon green our churches in readiness for our celebration of Christmas. We're almost done in preparation for the approaching birth of Jesus, the light entering a world of darkness. We look forward to the Christmas rituals that are sacred to us, hearing or maybe seeing the nativity story retold and reenacted, or singing Silent Night by candlelight in a darkened church. At the most obvious level, Christians celebrate the birth of Jesus long ago and far away because we believe that his life and teaching, his death and resurrection, Jesus transformed and redeemed human history. At a deeper level, in Christmas, we celebrate the profound miracle that God, the ultimate reality and ultimate truth, God who is love itself, became present and tangible in the everyday reality of human experience. Christmas is not just about something precious that happened long ago. It's about what happens now if we are ready to recognize it. Christmas uses the retelling of a sacred story to remind us that God is born into our world whenever we are open to it. Advent is not just about practicing our carols and dusting off our angels' wings for the pageant. It's about readying and opening ourselves to God's bold and transforming presence. This fourth Sunday of Advent is also especially precious because it focuses our attention on Mary, and in this C year of the lectionary cycle, on her visit with her kinswoman Elizabeth. Mary is the central figure of the Nativity in the Gospel account of Luke, and we hear more of her story than in any of the other Gospels. Those of you raised in the Roman Catholic or Orthodox traditions, and I'm sure we have some here, will have had much more exposure to Mary than those of us raised as Protestants, and you're probably better attuned to Mary's story. Let me be very clear, however. Mary should be important for all of us because she embodies characteristics to which all of us should aspire. Not just the Catholics and the Orthodox, not even just Christians, and certainly not just girls and women. The Mary of the Gospel account we hear today is someone all of us should seek to be like. So I want to reintroduce you to Mary this morning and challenge all of us to be more like her. Mary has long been revered in Christian tradition for her humility, her gentleness, her compassion, her submission. She's usually portrayed in art and statuary with a very serene expression and gracefully downcast eyes. She, in fact, has often been held up as the ideal of patience in suffering. That Mary, beloved in Christian tradition, is an adult Mary who is more imagined than actually present in the biblical story. Mary is, in fact, mentioned very little in the gospel accounts of Jesus' adult life and ministry. Where we get to know her is in these days preceding and immediately following Jesus' birth, some of which we've heard this morning. Luke's Mary is a teenage girl. From what we know of social patterns at the time, we can reasonably assume that she may have been 15 or 16. She was poor, living in a Jewish province of the Roman Empire. Her life would not have been easy or her prospects encouraging. She was disadvantaged by her poverty, her age, her ethnicity and religion, and her gender. As Luke's story opens, of course, she learns that she is pregnant outside of wedlock. As you know, and as Luke's story has it, Mary receives a visitation from a heavenly messenger. She learns that she is to bear a child, a son, and that he is to be the Holy One for whom Israel has been waiting. We can choose to understand Luke's story literally, and the Christian tradition is full of beautiful depictions of the Annunciation and the angelic presence at that moment. Or we can understand it more metaphorically, as representing Mary's private perception of the potential in the life she is carrying. But it seems to me that what's really important about this story is Mary's response to unexpected news. She so easily could have focused on the ways in which this pregnancy was yet an additional burden, a further experience of helplessness and powerlessness. To the contrary, however, Mary was a young woman of faith and of vision. The Mary of Luke's story is full of spunk. She's got attitude. She's the ultimate glass is half full kind of thinker. Confronting the unexpected and unbelievable news that she is to bear a child into the world, after just the briefest moment of wonderment, Mary embraces her new reality. Here I am, the servant of the Lord. Let it be. In a moment of discovery of the unexpected, Mary embraces opportunity. She believes in the power of the God of Israel. She lives in a time of apocalyptic thinking, a time when many looked for God to break into human history, bringing a new reign of peace and justice. What is remarkable in Mary's story is her willingness to recognize that she has a part to play. Mary is not simply ready to take part in God's plan for humankind. Mary is herself a bit of a revolutionary. And we hear her vision in the Song of Mary that we have heard twice this morning. In her song, Mary foreshadows the very same message that her son Jesus will preach in his adult ministry decades later. And it's the very same message that the Hebrew prophets have sounded for generations before. She speaks in daring and unsettling images of change. Mary does not accept the status quo in which she lives, and she's not discouraged by the limitations of her own position in the social order. She looks for the familiar patterns of human history to be transformed. She has faith in a God who acts with a powerful arm and who does great things. She welcomes a God who brings down the selfish and the arrogant and lifts up the lowly. She praises a God who fills the hungry and sends the rich empty away. She does not accept the troubles or the failings of her world, nor is she bowed by the limitations of her place in it. She believes that change is possible, that it is coming, and that she is the agent through whom God is acting. Mary has the idealism of youth and the boldness to embrace a remarkable vision. It was apparently Mahatma Gandhi who urged his followers to be the change that you want to see in the world. He and Mary would have gotten along well, don't you think? Mary knew her world to need change, to long for peace and justice, and she understood herself as having the responsibility to bear God into the world in order for that change to take place. She was ready to be more than an observer of history. Christians have usually seen Mary's role as unique, but I'd like to suggest, rather, that it's the model for all of us. Mary's pregnancy, and for that matter, every pregnancy, serves as a powerful image. And here's what I think it suggests. Bringing life or change into the world doesn't happen quickly. Bringing life or change into the world involves hard work. The expectant mother and father as well, though in a different way, sacrifices comfort and convenience in order for new life to come into being. Pregnancy uniquely shows us that there are things bigger than ourselves at work. Pregnancy represents the ultimate in possibility. Just as Mary did, we live in a broken and troubled world. As hers was, our world is torn and wounded by inequality, by injustice, violence, and human blindness. The arrogance and self-centeredness that Mary called for God to reverse in her time are so much a part of our world too, because they are a fundamental aspect of our nature as humans. We long for something better than we see around us, but we so easily feel overwhelmed by the magnitude of change that's needed. We long for change, and we're terrified of it. Mary's story teaches us that it's our opportunity and our responsibility to bear God into the world. It is through us that God acts. It is through our opening ourselves that we can glimpse God's broader vision of what is possible. It is through our choices to serve one another and to stand for truth that God transforms the world. Mary invites us not to be disheartened by how small we are, or how limited is our sphere of power. Mary reminds us that each of us can play a part in bringing the change that the world needs. Mary was not limited by her circumstances because she recognized her connection to God, to love itself, to courage itself, to hope itself. Mary recognized her own potential to become the instrument of something larger. May we be as optimistic as she was. May we be as bold, as willing to risk. May the glowing and growing lights of this Advent season be mirrored in our hearts and minds, that we, like Mary, may be the bearers of life and hope to one another and to the world. Amen.